The world's largest home improvement retailer just quietly added $100 billion to their target market, basically by buying a regional air conditioning guy. Welcome to Earnings Unscripted. It is May 19th, 2026, and we are unpacking Home Depot's first quarter numbers, ticker HD. And Miro, it is a bit of a weird one today. The top line is growing, but they are actually less profitable than they were a year ago.
Yeah, it is essentially a very expensive acquisition hangover. They posted solid revenue at $41.77 billion. That is up roughly 4.8% year over year. But paying for that kind of inorganic growth comes with a pretty heavy bill. Adjusted EPS dropped to $3.43, and their gross margin slipped 75 basis points.
Right. And just as a very quick disclaimer, everything we talk about today is strictly our personal opinion and definitely not financial advice. But speaking of heavy, watching the stock today was giving me whiplash. It gapped way down at the open, dipping below 292.
Right. But then it completely reversed.
Yes, it just erased the entire pre-market drop in like an hour. It ended up closing green for the regular session, finishing at 302.44.
Look, I think the tape shows traders just panicked over the margin squeeze in the dark pools. And then they actually read the call and realized Home Depot is playing a much bigger game. That HVAC deal you mentioned at the top, the Mingledorff's acquisition, that is not just a standard tuck-in buyout.
No, it is a massive loophole because, traditionally big HVAC equipment is super locked down by these strict regional dealer licenses, right? You literally cannot just sell a unit across state lines if a local guy owns the rights.
You can't sell the whole unit, no, but the individual parts are totally unregulated.
Exactly. So they just go and buy this one local Southeast distributor, not really for the air conditioners, but just to take their totally unrestricted replacement parts catalog and blast it through Home Depot's massive national fulfillment network.
It is brilliant. Pure regulatory arbitrage. They just bypassed all the regional gatekeepers and instantly pushed their total addressable market to $1.2 trillion.
It is wild how simple it is when you just have the logistics pipeline already built.
Sure, but feeding that pipeline is where the costs are piling up right now. You look under the hood, and they are completely tearing apart how the physical stores operate just to protect whatever operating margin they have left.
Yeah, the classic Orange Apron is definitely getting a total redesign this quarter. All right, let's get into the details.
Right, because historically the person who sold you a power drill also spent half their shift up on a ladder restocking lumber.
Yes, and that is incredibly inefficient when foot traffic is actually dropping. So they are formally splitting the store labor into two different camps.
Exactly. You have the merchandising execution team now, the MET. They do the heavy lifting, the inventory, and that frees up the classic Orange Apron associate to just sell. They have this running in over 1,000 stores already, and they are aiming for the whole fleet by the end of 2026.
Which makes sense. I think Anne-Marie Campbell, their senior VP, said something to the effect of, Orange Apron associates focus on driving deeper engagement and better customer service, which is basically corporate speak for, please do not let anyone walk out of here without buying something.
Pretty much, because, look at the volume. Customer transactions actually shrank this quarter, down about 0.9%.
Oh, sorry. Big ticket items were actually, no. I'm looking at total comps. Comp transactions were down too, right?
Right, down 1.3%. And big ticket comps, anything over $1,000, barely squeaked out a 0.8% gain. So if fewer people are walking through the doors, you absolutely need dedicated salespeople hunting for those bigger carts.
It is a massive shift from a warehouse model to an actual retail showroom, especially since they are hunting commercial jobs so aggressively right now, like snagging exclusive rights to Ramboard.
Yeah, that jumped out to me too.
Just because for anyone not in construction, Ramboard is essentially the absolute gold standard for heavy-duty floor protection. You usually have to go to a specialized wholesale yard to get it in bulk.
But now Home Depot is forcing those pros into their aisles if they want the good stuff. It's a really smart magnet strategy. You get the contractor in for the floor mats, and you sell them the entire kitchen renovation package while they're standing there.
Yes, but this actually brings me to the weirdest part of the earnings call, because
If big ticket items are slow, you would naturally think they are worried about the macro environment. Inflation, interest rates, housing lock-in.
You would think so, but management completely rejected that whole narrative.
Right? They were waving away the macro questions left and right. They straight up blamed a lot of the sluggishness on rain and cold spring weather.
Which is, incredibly convenient.
I actually wrote down a quote from Ted Decker about this. He literally said, "We are probably all spending too much time in economics in the home improvement industry these days."
That is exactly what you say when the economics are working against you.
Right? It feels like a defense mechanism, because if it is just a rainy April, you do not have to admit that 7 or 8% mortgage rates are killing major remodeling budgets.
Exactly. Look, weather plays a role. Spring seasonal stuff is huge for them. But ignoring the fact that free cash flow was up 47% year over year. So the core financial machine is still working beautifully.
Right. It was over $5 billion for the quarter.
Sure, but they're not using any of that cash to buy back stock right now. Share count is flat at 996 million. They completely paused buybacks to digest these acquisitions and pay down debt. So they really cannot engineer their earnings per share if top-line sales start stalling.
Which means they are totally exposed if the consumer really does pull back. So are they just hoping for a really sunny summer to save the whole year? Where does this leave them heading into next quarter?
Basically, they are strapping in for a rough second quarter. Management did reaffirm their full-year guidance, so they still expect total sales to grow roughly 2.5% to 4.5%. But the CFO was very clear that this margin pressure we just talked about, it is going to continue into Q2. They do not expect it to really flatten out until the back half of the year.
Okay, so just more acquisition indigestion in the short term, but I am still hung up on the risks here. If they are waving off macro questions and blaming sluggish foot traffic on a rainy April, what happens when real input shocks hit? Because they actively warned about fuel prices and new tariffs building up.
Yeah, that is the big unknown right now. McPhail explicitly noted that costs on the horizon have, I think his exact phrase was, a bias towards an increase. So you have rising commodity costs, ongoing margin squeeze from buying GMS, and they are allocating exactly zero capital to stock buybacks.
Right. So if they miss on sales, there's no financial engineering safety net. They just have to eat the drop in EPS.
Exactly. There is no hiding it. Which is fine if execution is totally flawless. But, they had a pretty funny operational slip-up right on the call.
Wait, you mean the store count thing?
Yes. The CFO was reading his prepared script and proudly announced they opened 12 new stores this quarter. And then later in the Q&A, he had to sheepishly interject and apologize because he got tongue-tied. They actually only opened 2 stores.
I mean, I kind of get it. When you suddenly expand your total addressable market to $1.2 trillion, it's probably pretty easy to lose track of 10 massive retail warehouses.
Just lost in the couch cushions. But seriously, stepping back, it shows they're moving incredibly fast. They're building a genuine national wholesale empire to conquer the pro market. They just need to prove they can swallow all these acquisitions without tripping over their own feet.
Becoming an absolute logistics juggernaut, just as long as the weather stays sunny. I think that's a perfect summary of where Home Depot sits right now. Let's go ahead and wrap it up for today. Miro, great stuff as always.
Good talking.
And hey, if you want these earnings breakdowns to just show up automatically in your feed whenever a big report drops, definitely hit follow on the podcast. Just as a quick aside, this entire show is actually generated using AI, which is exactly how we're able to read through those 100-page financial filings and get an episode out to you just hours after the bell. We are always looking for feedback or new ticker requests, so feel free to email us at earningsunscripted@datamandis.ca or just grab the X link down in the show notes.
See you next quarter.